Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Keith Lemmer, the CEO of WellNet Healthcare, and we're going to kick off in about 1 to 2 minutes. Bear with us. We're joined by Fritz Brogan and Dave Earl. Fritz is the CEO of Mission Group, and Dave is the Chief Revenue Officer of WellNet Healthcare. And we'll be back in a moment. Minute, we'll go. All right, terrific. Welcome to the second season of Shark Tank. My name is Keith Lemmer, and I'm the CEO of WellNet Healthcare. I'm joined by Fritz Brogan, the CEO of Mission Group Hospitality, and Dave Earl, our Chief Revenue Officer. Today is exciting. It's our first of our 5 series where we're taking a CEO who doesn't really know a great deal about health insurance. He's a willing participant. And in essence, we are going to talk healthcare. Fritz has received no prior insight about what we're going to discuss. He knows WellNet by name only and sort of by background. This is going to be a training session where Dave is going to act as the advisor to talk about alternative health plans, to talk about optimizing health insurance. A little bit of background on Fritz. He's the CEO again of Mission Hospitality Group, and they own about 6 restaurants in the Washington area. They are massive enterprises, some by the National Stadium, others by DuPont Circle. Fritz got his start when he was in law school and opened his first tavern and never looked back. Fritz is very active at Georgetown University, mentoring young folks and likes all things politics as well. Lives in the Washington area with his wife and young daughter. And with that, I'm going to turn the floor over to Dave, who's, again, WellNet's Chief Revenue Officer, and is going to act as a broker advisor and going to share strategies of how best to communicate alternative funding, optimizing your group health plan. What we're going to do is Dave's going to take about 15, 20 minutes or so and practice pitch. There's going to be conversation from Fritz and Dave back and forth. I'll open up the floor and I'm going to see what worked, what didn't work. And then along the way, please type any and all questions in the chat box. And at the end of the session, the third segment, we'll open up the floor and ask those questions to Fritz and Dave. And so with that, Sharks, let's go.
Sounds great. Thanks, Keith. Well, Fritz, just to confirm for everybody in the audience today, we've not met each other at any time in the past until today. Is that a fair statement?
That's correct. That's right.
Great. Well, today I'm Dave Earl, and I'm with the DNA consulting firm. And so, Fritz, I really just want to spend some time today with you, getting to know what kind of drives your business, and see if there might be an opportunity for me to work with you as your consultant in the future and try to help you with optimizing your health plan. So what I'd like to do today is really kind of go through some questions, get to know you, gain some information, and have a discussion about healthcare, what's going on, and suggestions I might have for you. And at the end of the day, what I'd like to happen, hopefully, is that you're willing to at least have a second meeting with me so that we can take a deeper dive into your health plan and find out how I can help you. And so ultimately, I want to be hired as your consultant. So does that sound like a good use of your time today?
Sounds great.
Awesome. Well, Fritz, first I want to get to know you a little bit. So I've done some research, done a little studying, and it looks like, the Mission Group has done some great things and have opened a lot of really cool restaurants in the DC area. And so can you talk to me a little bit about, Mission Group and kind of your culture, your focus and, the type of employees that you're typically hiring and looking for?
Sure. So my business partner and I started Mission Group in 2014. We both own parts of other kind of pubs and nightclubs and other parts of the city. But really we sensed that Washington, D.C. was going to move more from Georgetown, where a lot of the restaurants and nightlife were focused for a very long time, and sort of moving into other parts of the city as the city rapidly expanded. So we found this kind of rundown, abandoned Russian nightclub in DuPont Circle. This had this incredible bones. So we were walking through it, and it had old brick and kind of these stained glass windows, and kind of realized it kind of looked like a Texas Mission, like an old church, like something you'd see in Mexico or in East Texas. So we came with the name Mission, and we thought Mexican food is very simple because when you have tacos, regardless if you're 21 years old or 85 years old, you're gonna have a cold margarita, maybe a ranch water, maybe a Corona or a Pacifico. It's a food that really brings people together to drink. And obviously, we wanted to have a party atmosphere, and frankly, the margin on alcohol is very strong. So we knew we wanted alcohol to be a strong component of our business. So we opened the first Mission in 2014, did incredibly well. And from that, we just kept growing and opening other brands and other restaurants. We opened Mission Navy Yard in 2018. And that's what really put us on the map as a major player in the restaurant business in DC. It's located, as Keith said, right next to Nationals Ballpark. It's about 10,000 square feet, fits about 1,000 people. So it's a huge restaurant, one of the highest grossing restaurants in the region. It's busy all the time. Being next to Nats Park helps a lot. But Navy Yard is just an incredible neighborhood, lots of young folks, lots of new development. So our corporate motto is it's more fun eating a bar than drinking a restaurant. So everything we do is sort of focused on the bar area. At that location in Navy Yard, we have the largest bar in DC. It's almost 200 feet long. So it's just a huge bar where you can always belly up to it, grab a drink and have fun. So we try to recruit people. We try to hire people that have great personalities and kind of love the energetic atmosphere that we provide. We call it controlled chaos in the restaurant business. You show up every day. There's always gonna be something going wrong. You're gonna have a customer that wants something different. People call out sick. So we call it controlled chaos. And our goal is to give our guests an incredible experience. Obviously, with COVID, it's been an interesting few years. We've tended to fare better than some of our competitors. Our demographic, because we're bar focused, a lot of folks in their 20s and 30s, they weren't as concerned about COVID as perhaps a restaurant that was geared towards full dining or towards older folks. So while COVID was difficult for us, we're able to pivot. And we're actually opening a restaurant next door to Mission in Navy Yard. There'll be 14,000 square feet. It's one of the largest restaurants in the city again, called Royal Sands Social Club, kind of Palm Beach theme, which is where I'm from. Lots of trees, lots of great seafood. So I encourage everyone to come check it out when it opens in July.
Oh, that sounds great. Well, you know what? I also want to find out a little bit about one of the most recent restaurants you opened. Is it called Salazar? Is that
Salazar
right?
opened in January. So we found this great spot on 14th Street. One of the ideas that I came up with was building this. This has a great rooftop bar with two separate bar areas. I knew I wanted to do something on the rooftop to kind of drive people up there all the time. We found this old antique bell and we etched Salazar in it. We kind of hung it over some grass. And what we're known for is you go up to the bar and you get a frozen shot glass with your favorite shot in it. You do the shot and you throw it at the bell, and it makes a great sound. So it's a really fun kind of, if you're with your friends, like we had a company party there last night and everyone was kind of taking bets and throwing things at it. So we've kind of found that giving gaming and giving kind of a socializing aspect is an important part of hospitality these days. So that clang of the bell, so we hear all day long there. It's kind of a fun way to give our guests something to do when they're open, when they're here.
That sounds like a lot of fun. In fact, I bet it's probably like a TikTok sensation for the kids these days, right?
Yes, absolutely. As long as they're over 21, yes, they're welcome to come TikToking. Yeah,
obviously.
Yeah.
Well, there's one other thing that interested me a lot, because if I pick my favorite drink, it's got to be tequila.
Yeah.
And I understand at Salazar, you've got what, 50 some odd tequilas? Is that right?
We do. We have everything from kind of your basic tequilas that you might sip on a daily basis up to really rare and difficult stuff to find that might be for a celebration. So we have the Tesla tequila, which I don't know if you know the story, but Elon Musk made a joke about making tequila and someone kind of challenged him on it. So Elon Musk just kind of went out there and created this tequila. Only sold a few, I think maybe 10,000 bottles of it. So we were able to buy a few of the bottles before it went out, before it sold out. We sell it for $3.50 a shot. It's incredibly good. It comes in an amazing Tesla designed bottle. Of course, it's a piece of art in itself. But that's probably our most rare and most unique tequila. And obviously, Tesla's a very popular thing with people. So if you're an Elon Musk fan, you want to come in and try that for sure.
Well, you know what? Definitely, because I love tequila so much.
Yeah.
If I'm privileged enough to earn your business, promise me that we can at least sample one of those shots together someday.
I love it. Great pitch. Let's do it.
All right, sounds great.
Yeah.
Well, let's jump into a little bit about your culture and what's going on. So, you mentioned that you kind of went through the pandemic better than most.
Yeah.
But have you been impacted by the Great Resignation like other restaurateurs like yourself?
Interesting question. We saw it a lot during COVID, where a lot of folks left the DC area to move to Florida to move to Texas, to other states that were more wide open. DC had some of the more restrictive COVID policies compared to anywhere else in the US. So a lot of people that were working in the hospitality business, who didn't have a family, didn't have anything else tying them here, said, hey, I'd rather be in the Florida beach, or I'd rather be in Texas and Austin, or one of these fun cities. So we definitely saw some of that, but not as much. We're lucky. DC is a very unique place. Most of our servers and bartenders who make up the bulk of our employees, most of them work on the Hill or the military, or they're in grad school, or they're doing something else kind of in the government sphere in DC. They want to work a second job to make some extra money on the weekends. So we're pretty lucky to have this well-educated, people, most of them have background, graduate degrees, background checks, all of that. We just want to make some extra money on the weekends. So it's kind of a unique workforce you only find in a place like DC.
Well, so it sounds like, at least right now, you're running a very successful business. Obviously, you're probably paying attention to income, revenues, and your preservation of cash. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, I think cash flow is what separates the men from the boys in the restaurant business, because at the end of the day, you just have to have money to operate. And we saw with COVID, we had some cash reserves. We were able to kind of weather the storm. We were surprised that some of our competitors, who we thought were very strong competitors of ours, just didn't have any cash saved up, and that way the waves knocked them out. So I think cash flow is what separates great companies from just good companies.
Well, that's good to know, because one of the things that I want to focus on with you today is an opportunity for you to preserve cash, increase income and cash flow, and really not having to make an additional investment that you're not already making today. So if I can do that, would that be worth a second meeting with you?
Of course. Yeah.
Okay. So obviously I'll talk to you a little bit about what we want to discuss today, and it has something to do with healthcare. And I know that you have others on your team that are working, in healthcare for you and managing some of those expenses. So, but I want to talk to you about the reason why I think it's important for us to spend some time there today. So, talking about your plan, first of all, it sounds like you've got let's see, 5, soon to be 6 restaurants. And so, how many employees do you have right now on the plan?
We have about 400 employees.
400 employees. Okay.
Yeah.
And so typically what we see is, 400 employees, that would equate to probably an annual spend of somewhere between 3 million to 3.5 million in total spend for your healthcare. Does that sound similar to your spend?
In that range, yeah.
Okay, great. So generally what we're able to do is, as a consultant, I try to look for really what are the best in class service partners that are out there that can manage the expenses of the health plan better than most. And I found one, and I'll tell you a little bit about them today, a company called WellNet Healthcare. And so what I found when talking to them is that generally they can save anywhere between 10 to 20% off of your plan spend. So for you, that's anywhere between maybe $600,000 to $800,000. And it's money that you're spending today. So it's a matter of just managing that asset and managing that sector of your business like you manage every other aspect of your business. So that's what I'm going to talk to you about today. So has anyone ever talked to you about that before?
No.
They haven't. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, good. So you know what? Let's jump into something though that I think it's important for you to know as we get into this. And I know that you spent some time, in politics and legislature, so you may know some of these things. But do you remember back when the Affordable Care Act was passed? Do you remember that law and everything that went around it? A lot of people refer to it as Obamacare.
Unfortunately, I do remember it. Yes. Yeah.
Okay. So I'm not going to jump into what that law meant and everything, but I'm going to touch on something I think is pretty important. Out of that law, there was a portion of it that came out. It was called the medical loss ratio. Medical loss ratio simply meant that it was developed because there was a belief that insurance companies were making way too much money. So they said, okay, going forward, if you're a small employer, less than 100 employees, then in fact, it said 20% of the money that you're making can go towards profit and admin, and 80% has to go towards claims, paying for the claims within the plan. And then for larger employers, it said that it was 85-15. So you can only make 15% profit, and then 85% had to go towards the processing and payment of claims. And that's, when someone goes to visit a doctor or hospital.
Sure.
So the intent of that was to regulate what was being spent and how it was being spent. And there were other things that came out of that law too, but that was something that was pretty pivotal. And I'll tell you why. So, but before I do, I was thinking about you being in the restaurant business. So being in the restaurant business, imagine if someone came to you, a regulatory agency, and they said to you, hey, Fritz, from this point forward, you can only make 15% profit on food and alcohol in your restaurants, no matter what. 85% of everything else has to be spent on the business and the
Don't
food.
give the DC government any ideas here, okay?
Yeah, this is all hypothetical, right? Right. But imagine if they said to you, this is the parameters where you now can make a profit. So if you're now owning these restaurants and you can only make 15% from everything that you do, I would imagine the only way that you could increase your profits or the amount of money that you make, that 15%, is really selling more food, selling more alcohol, and having more restaurants. Yep. Is that fair to say?
And cutting costs. Yeah, those two. Yeah.
Yeah, and cutting costs. Exactly.
Yeah.
So now think about that in healthcare. So in healthcare, it's much the same way. But it's a little different because now you have big insurance companies, and these insurance companies, the only way they can make profit is that 15% of the premium they collect from people like you. So the only way that they can possibly increase their profits is to allow more claims to happen, the cost of those claims to go up, and then not as focused on managing the cost like you described. And so what happens, it's happening in healthcare today all across the country, is the cost of care continues to go up. The claims within a plan like yours are unmanaged, and so those go up. And so if that continues to happen, what simply happens is that they come back to you each year, and your agent probably says, hey, I did my best, but your cost is going to go up 8 to 10% this year.
Yeah.
That's typically what you hear, right?
Yep.
Well, and that's just because that no one is managing that aspect of your business like you manage all of your restaurants to increase the profits. Okay. So, and here's something else that's really important that I want to also kind of bring to your attention that's pretty significant. In fact, I'll show you a visual. This might help. So let me ask you a question. If you were going to have a knee or hip replacement done, you or someone in your family or someone that you love, what hospital would you go to if within the DC area? What hospital would you go to if you're going to have something like that done?
Well, I live close to Sibley Hospital, which is where my son was born. So we love Sibley.
Okay. So let's look at something here real quick.
They're part of the Johns Hopkins network.
Okay. So let me share something with you and see if this resonates. Okay. So within every area within the country, in every single state, generally the cost for care can vary greatly, anywhere between 300 to 1,500%, depending upon where you are. You mentioned in Florida, where you spent some time. Florida, the differences are closer to 1,000% for one procedure versus another.
Is that due to the demographics of residents being older, or is that just how it is down there?
Great question. That's a great question. So what's interesting about healthcare is within healthcare, there are a lot of laws, a lot of regulations and everything, but one of the regulations that they never passed was to say how much a provider can charge for the services they render, except if you're in Medicare and Medicaid. And in Medicare and Medicaid, then they have to accept those levels of payment determined by the government. So I'll tell you that first, because here's what happens within places like Florida, where you've got a lot of people that have retired. What happens is many of those people are on Medicare. So most hospitals might have a high population of people coming to see them that are on Medicare. And so because of that, they're having to receive Medicare level payments. And so then what they do to make up the profits, then for the commercial sector and the private sector like you, employers like you, they charge higher prices for that part of their business to be able to offset the low amounts that they're paid by Medicare.
It's almost like a loss leader. We charge less prices on happy hour to get to account for other things. Charge higher prices to account for it.
Exactly. Same idea, same kind of concept. So that's exactly right. Yeah. So then what's interesting though, when you look at even DC, the market where you live in and the market where your employees go for care, that if they had to go for a knee or hip replacement, notice over here at Sibley Memorial Hospital, they're charging for that procedure around $40,000. Okay. And then for someone like George Washington University, they're charging 3 times that amount. So
I'm
almost
glad I made the right choice here blindly. I chose right. So that was good. Yeah.
Yes, exactly. Exactly.
Yeah.
But here's what's interesting. It's funny that you said that had to do with the birth of a child. That's
Yeah.
where you would go, right?
Yep.
Well, you're not different than most Americans. Most Americans will actually go to where a child was born or where someone might recommend that they go to for care. But if you stop and think about it for a second, is that really the right way to pick a hospital whenever you need care or surgery of any kind?
No.
No.
It should be a free
Right.
market decision.
It should be.
Yeah.
And it really is. But what's interesting is that most people are like you, Fritz. Most people, they just go based on their gut. They go based on birth of children or recommendations from a friend. And if you think about that, when you're responsible for the cost and care for the health plan for your company, and if your employees are allowed to go wherever they want to go, and there's no one guiding, directing, or navigating them to the right hospitals, then it's very highly possible that you're going to pay, let's say at George Washington University, significantly more than if they possibly went to Sibley. Okay.
We'll be banning George. We'll be banning GW after I beat this data.
So, and here's what's also equally important. So there's the cost of care first. Okay. Then there's also the quality of care.
Of course.
And a lot of people think about, and quality, by the way, is linked directly to outcomes.
Right.
You go to a high quality facility, they generally have better outcomes.
Yeah.
And here's what's also interesting. Like you in your business, you've learned how to manage restaurants and be very efficient about it, how you purchase, supplies, purchase liquor, and all those kinds of things. And so hospitals that do procedures on a common basis, they've also figured out how to do those and do those efficiently with a high outcome. And so most people think they're going to charge more. They actually charge much less.
Right.
So I can tell you, it was great that you picked Sibley, because Sibley is an example where they charge less, but they're also the most efficient. And by the way, they also have the highest quality. So now start thinking about that. If I know you care about your employees, you care greatly about them. So don't you want your employees to be able to go to the highest quality, lowest cost providers available to them? Is that fair to say?
Of course, everyone wins. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. But in the environment that you're in today, there's no guidance, there's no navigation, and none of that is occurring. And so I think that's a problem. And so what I do, Fritz, is I work with my clients just like you, and then I help them find providers like a WellNet Healthcare, who I'll talk to you about in a moment. And that's all they focus on. It is one of many things they focus on, actually, is helping members find the best possible care at the lowest possible price with the best outcomes. And so it's kind of, a trifecta. You win on all 3 levels. So let me pause there for a second. I've talked about a lot. What's your thoughts and opinions of what you've heard so far?
It's been very interesting. Yeah. I'll be honest, like most CEOs, this is not something I think about on a regular basis. We've got about 150 problems. This is far down the list of things we talk about on a daily basis.
And I'm not surprised by that. And so if you could do something to change your health plan for the benefit of your employees, or save the company money to a place where you can have money to invest in other restaurants, like the next restaurant that you intend to open, would that make it rise to a higher part of your radar to pay more attention to it?
Well, for sure. But you've mentioned all the positive attributes. Are there any potential downsides or risks towards changing into this new plan?
Yeah, you know what? I'm glad you asked that, because that's the common question that we get anytime I'm talking to someone just like you, Fritz. The risk. And because you're not going to take a huge risk just for the opportunity to save money. You don't do that. You're a smart businessman.
We don't cut corners. We learned that lesson very early on. Yeah.
Yeah. And so within the fully insured world, like you are today, there's protections, obviously, right? You pay one premium a month, and that premium covers all of your insurance, all of your claims, and all the administration. Well, within a world that I will describe to you, and in fact, I'm going to show you this slide. This will be helpful. Today, you're fully insured. What I want to talk to you about today is an alternative business strategy, and it's referred to as self-funding. Let me just pause for a second. You ever heard that term before, self-funding?
I've heard it. I don't know. I can't explain it 100%, but I've certainly heard it before.
Okay, that's okay. Well, simply put, self-funding means you're the self, you're the one that's actually now funding your healthcare and funding and paying for healthcare as it's consumed by your employees. Now, here's the benefit of doing something like that, because on the left-hand side, you pay your premium. You just pay the premium today, and healthcare happens. You don't know where your employees are going, what hospital they're going to, how much they're spending for care. All you do is you get, reports at the end of the year that said, you know what, this was not a good year. And so we're going to have to ask for a bigger increase. Or, you know what, this was a better year, but we're going to ask for a less increase. But what you don't know within this little box is how much did you really pay for care and how much did they really retain in terms of profits, right?
When you look at the self-funded, is there a concern over the privacy that under the fully insured, we really don't know what our employees do or don't do on their health insurance plans? Is there a privacy concern when it's self-funded that employees are going to think that HR or I or whoever is now understanding what's going on in their personal lives?
Oh, wow. Great question.
Yeah.
And so it's clear that you've had a little bit of exposure to what happens within this industry. And so, yeah, in fact, that's another reason why they passed the really kind of laws under HIPAA. HIPAA really kind of came back and said, you know what, within the healthcare community, you're supposed to protect health information, or they call it PHI. And you as a plan, we have to, as an administrator like WellNet has to protect all that information, and they can only share information to you that is information that you need to see in order to make an informed decision. So most of the time, what they do is it's called de-identify. They just remove all the important aspects like the name and the social and the date of birth and things like that, that you could use to identify who was getting that care. And so then all you're doing is you're getting individual information about what's happening and what's driving and who's driving the care, but not really the specific individual. Yeah. So that's how we protect it. And in fact, people that are in my job as a consultant, and also people that pay claims and administer plans as a third-party administrator like WellNet, have to have firewalls in place to make sure all of that data is protected and they only share information as it's needed. So does that help?
It does. Another question, when you look at the cost benefit analysis of switching over to the self-funded, does the demographics of your workforce make a difference? So for example, we're a relatively young company because, most people work in restaurants tend to be starting out their career, not ending their career. Does that mean costs are generally lower versus a company that maybe hires a lot of folks who are at the last stages of their career?
Yeah, that's exactly right. You nailed it. In fact, generally, whenever you're looking at a population like yours, in that industry, a third-party administrator, when they're trying to now establish and buy protection for your risk, that's a very attractive risk for them, because oftentimes it's single individuals who are really not in childbearing years, and typically they're probably less than 30, and most of them believe they're bulletproof. A lot of them potentially are still
100%. They all believe they're bulletproof. That's
right. But you know what? Didn't we all at that age?
Yes.
So, and many of them might even still be on their parents' plan, right? Is that what you're finding?
Yep. Or some of them are on their college plan, or some in the military, or other plans for sure. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And so when we go back to the other aspects of the benefits of the self-funding plan, here's what's different. You still pay for, administration and things like that, but claims, the difference is within the self-funded environment, anytime you do anything, or an administrator like WellNet does anything to reduce the number of claims or the cost of the claims by perhaps like navigating them to Sibley versus George Washington, you benefit directly from every dollar saved. So every dollar saved comes right back to your bottom line. And so
is that why you see sort of companies encouraging healthier eating, or whatever, workout classes, no smoking, that sort of stuff, because it helps the bottom line as well as employee health?
Yeah, absolutely. Because every program that you can put in to encourage the right behaviors and help navigate people to the right providers is going to save the plan money. And when it saves the plan money, if you're self-funded, that money flows right back to you as the employer. And so another part about that, you ask about the risk. So let me touch on that. Within a self-funded plan, you have protection for that risk, just like you do in the fully insured world. Same thing. they describe it differently, but it's embedded just like it is in a self-funded plan. And in fact, there are protections in place for specific individuals if they were to become very, very sick, as well as protection for you in an aggregate in case the whole plan were to run really, really, really bad. We provide those protections, or they provide those protections, to make sure that you're covered at all times. And in fact, at the end of the day, this protection they provide has a maximum cost. That maximum cost is the same maximum cost you pay if you pay 12 monthly premium payments. But again, the difference is that when you have a good plan year, you win. Now, we'll share one other thing with you, that it is possible about 1 out of every 5 to 7 years, you're going to have a bad year. There's going to be someone who has a very serious condition or taking a very high cost medication. And when those things happen, it is possible that your plan might have to pay a little bit more than they would have paid in a fully insured premium. But 6 out of 7 or 4 out of the 5 years, you're going to reap the rewards of being with the plan that manages the cost for you. So does that help you?
How is WellNet paid during this? Is it, or how are they? Do we pay them directly, or?
Yeah, you sure do. So, and you can set that up however you want to, but generally administrators, third-party administrators like WellNet are paid what's called a per employee per month fee. And so that simply means out of 400 employees, they identify what that per employee per month might be. They multiply that, and then you pay that on a monthly basis. Just as when your claims are incurred, the claims are coming to you, and now you're getting to see where your claims are being paid and for what conditions might be driving the cost of your plan. Now, let's talk about WellNet for a second, because I have to share this with you, because this is why I like WellNet. And if you were to do business with me, I think it would be who I would recommend to you as probably the best solution. I'm not going to go through all this slide because it's really busy, but I will tell you this is what I like about WellNet is they have this methodology they call crawl, walk, and run. So you can see that in the middle of this graph. And so that simply means is that they meet you where you are in your healthcare journey and what is most comfortable to you in terms of your appetite for risk, your hunger for savings, and really your ability to communicate this information and change within your company. I like that. And most companies don't think of it like this. So what does that mean simply? It means, Fritz, that you can keep the plan design that you have today, have a national network like you have today, have a national PBM like you have today. And so we don't have to make any plan changes. But the difference is now you're going to have information at your fingertips, know what's driving the cost of your plan. And then all of these things on here, WellNet has this thing called the toolkit. And then they use each one of these things and they deploy these at certain times to immediately start driving down the cost of the claims. And that cost of the claims, remember, every dollar they save, that dollar comes right back to you. And there are a lot of things that they deploy based on your comfort level and in whatever time makes sense. So
give me an example of what you mean by that.
Yeah, so here's a great example. I'm glad that you asked that question. I'll give you really 2 quick examples. One, oftentimes with other populations, this doesn't apply to you, but it's very common that you might have someone that's on the plan, they're active, but yet they're eligible for Medicare. And so what we like to do is just educate them to make sure they know what their options are available to them on like the marketplace because they're eligible for Medicare. And what we oftentimes find is that we can present to them a solution that's got a lower premium, but it has, a richer benefit. And so about 50% of the time, the people say, yes, I want to move over to that plan. Well, if you stop and think about that for a second, a lot of those people that are moving back over to a Medicare eligible plan, they're oftentimes driving a big part of the cost.
They're the higher cost people. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Are you able to give is there a way to give them a bonus or incentive to move over to Medicaid, or is that not allowed under the law?
Good question.
Yeah.
So no, in fact, there is a law. It's actually the Medicare secondary payer. No, yeah, that's right. Medicare secondary payer rules. And so what that simply says is that we're not allowed to incentivize someone to move off of the plan onto Medicare, but what we can do, educate them. Exactly. And through education, they can make their own decision. It's not a force, it's a voluntary decision. So And then another thing that, I know that WellNet does that I like is that what I described to you earlier about the navigation. They help members navigate themselves to really kind of high quality, low cost providers with better outcomes. So really just the right provider at the right time at the right price. That's what they focus on. And I like that. I think that's important because left to your own devices, people are going to go to where they had a baby, or they're going to go to, where a friend might recommend when they're having serious procedures done.
Let's see on this list. The telemedicine has been listed. Something we've seen an increase in, again, because we have a lot of younger members, is a lot of younger employees, is people are more interested in remote mental health stuff or remote exercise or personal training. I think COVID has also kind of made people more willing to do things remotely. Is there kind of a big growth in the telehealth and mental health field?
Oh, man, you better believe it. In fact, I wish that at the beginning of the pandemic that I had invested in some of those companies that are doing telemedicine, because they saw 200% growth in their businesses and in their models, and a lot of new entrants into the market because of that. So telemedicine has and continues to be a great solution for people who are willing to do those kinds of things. And the type of people that you're employing, like these millennials and Gen Z and Gen X and things like that, they love to have these types of solutions. In fact, that's another reason why I like this company, WellNet, because they embed telemedicine as a basic component and a core of what they do. You don't pay extra for that. That's something that they put in there. And then if you want to upgrade that and you want to add behavioral health and let's say psychiatry or other types of services, you can do that. So I like that about them as well.
One more question for you. So we currently offer dental and optical as well. I don't see that listed in any of the slides. Is that included in what WellNet does as well?
Yeah, absolutely. So oftentimes it's interesting. I'm glad you asked that question. It's very common for people that self-fund their medical to also self-fund their dental. In fact, probably 80% of the clients that I've taken on, they typically want to self-fund their dental when they do the medical. Dental is not a big driver to your overall cost, but the philosophy is the same. Knowing where your dollars are being spent.
It sounds appealing to we're competing for talent with other companies. So the fact that we didn't used to offer, we added it because our competitors started offering it. You don't want your job description to look less filling to their job description.
Absolutely. And I will tell you that, Fritz, what we have done with some of our other clients is that we've gone to the clients and said, okay, now we've saved you all of this money. So you remember I mentioned to you, potentially could save you somewhere between $600,000 to $800,000 deploying some of these strategies. And so some of the people that we work with said, okay, wait, I want to take this money and reinvest it back into my employees. And I want to change my plan design so that I encourage the right behaviors. So we have a lot of our customers will then take that money and start waiving copays and deductibles and co-insurances for making informed decisions. And so that's another reason why I like working in a TPA self-funded model, because guess what? You can change your plan design and however you want to fit the needs of your employees and what they want. And if you're in the fully insured model, they have to get all of their insurance plans approved by the state before that they can offer those types of plan designs. And guess what? They're not going to offer you the plan designs that fit exactly what you want to do.
It sounds much more flexible for sure.
Absolutely. So let me pause there because we've talked about an awful lot and just get your thoughts on what we've talked about today and any questions that you might have with regard to what our firm does at DNA Consulting and how we help companies like you save money.
This has been very fascinating. I know I've been peppering you with questions along the way, but I think it's been very interesting.
Great. Well, so let me ask you this. You remember at the beginning of the conversation, I said, if I at least intrigued you enough and gave you some information to get you interested in wanting to pursue this alternative strategy, that we could have a second meeting and take a deeper dive. Would it be okay for us to go ahead and plan on that second meeting?
I'm in. All right.
Great. Okay. That's all for today.
All right.
Terrific. Dave, thank you. I think you did a great job. And Fritz, a ready, willing, and able participant. Thank you for being the audience and for your questions. So going to do two items right now. I'm going to ask questions of both you and Dave, and then also all the participants on the line. Feel free to ask any questions in the chat box, and I'll relay them to Fritz and Dave as well. And so I guess my first question to Fritz, what did Dave do well? And also, what could he have improved on as he's talking about these alternative strategies different from the carrier, right? In essence, it's a plan that looks and smells like what you have now, but it's, less expensive, higher quality, a better member experience. Did he frame it up in a way that made sense?
Absolutely. So first, he has a kind of a calm, soothing pitch, which I think is definitely what you want to hear. Not too in your face. I also thought it was great. He kind of kept asking probing questions that kind of give you a yes answer. I mean, no one's going to say, you want to save $500,000. No one responds no. Whatever you're selling, you want to get some of the habit of saying yes or nodding their head or agreeing with you. So I thought that was great. I think it would have been helpful to have maybe see another hospitality or a restaurant company, kind of what they do with insurance and kind of showing it, because our industry is a little bit different than someone else's. So I think maybe seeing here's company X, who's a competitor of yours, or maybe in the same field of yours, that would have been helpful to me.
Definitely. Great thought. And then my next question for you is that if this is such a large expense and you have a lot of other things that you're dealing with, why is health insurance so low down on the totem pole for your company?
That's a good question. I just think companies sell whatever they sell. I think that they're focused on their main stuff day to day. We're focused on acquisitions and hiring new people and everything else. I think stuff sort of falls beneath the radar. I also think healthcare is sort of an uncomfortable conversation generally in America. Most people just don't want to talk about it. We all think we're invincible, so nobody wants to talk about it. Period.
Right. Yeah. Right. And here's another question for you, and then I'll open up. I see a question came on the chat box. Is there something that you wish that Dave asked you that maybe he didn't?
I think he asked the right questions. I mean, I think it might be helpful, I guess, depending on who the salesperson is pitching. It's who in the company is going to make this decision. So I don't know. You're probably not always going to sit down with an owner or a CEO. Maybe you're meeting with an HR person or the CIO, sort of asking in your company, what is decision-making, authority, or what's the process? That way you're not wasting your time talking to the wrong person, or understanding eventually who makes the call. What do you have to do to kind of get them swayed to your side?
Yeah, that's interesting. I'd say this, right? Having been in this business almost 25 years, I look at it like this, it's such a big financial investment that while the human resources is involved and others in the company, you got to have everybody really around the table, from the owner and or the CFO, because, of the large checks that you're cutting every month, but also when you combine that with, the culture, right? Workforce development, engagement, and trying to, pick up new talent along the way. You want to become known as not just the employer, not just the restaurant of choice to work at, but the employer of choice in the community. And so we look at this. We have a customer in the automotive space. They're not just competing with other auto dealers. They're competing with the federal government. They're competing with Amazon. And so having high quality, lower cost benefits, the ability to offer free care at times. I mean, we're seeing a lot more executives like yourself sit around the table. So that's food for thought.
I think when Dave started mentioning the money aspect, that gets your attention. You start saying the numbers that you're talking about. That's every executive's job dream is to start cutting costs to that level, because it means a huge upside when it comes to profit.
Yeah, definitely. And like you said before, cash flow separates the men from the boys, right? I mean, this puts more dollars back to your bottom line, and also creates more value for the company. So now, Dave, I'm going to flip it to you. So is there something that you wish you had asked Fritz that maybe you did not?
So normally I would say yes, but Fritz, you asked great questions, and those questions that you asked were at the appropriate time, where I could then kind of pivot and go to that part of the discussion. And then that allowed me to kind of make sure I covered the things I wanted to cover. If I thought about it differently, I may have wanted to structure the sequence a little differently so that I covered the things so it made sense, logically. But for the sake of our conversation, sometimes I like to just kind of pivot and go where you're asking the questions. I think you nailed it, though, in something that I even had as a slide, but I deleted it. I wish I had kept one of our hospitality clients in the slide deck so that I could have also showed you, and hey, here's someone just like you that implemented these solutions that I'm talking about in the hospitality industry, and here's what they saved. So I wish that I had retained that one.
That's one of the first questions we ask anyone who's selling anything to us is, well, tell us somebody else in our space that's using this. If the answer is no one else, we're probably going to say no, unless you're, groundbreaking, whatever it is you're selling, Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Dave, I thought you did a great job building rapport and gaining trust. It was obvious that, you had connected with Fritz really in the first couple of minutes. So that was really nice to see. Well done. I got some questions in the chat box. This is to Fritz. It says, Fritz, what is your biggest apprehension on moving to a self-funded plan now being fully insured, for all of these years?
Yeah, I think that's a good question. I think anytime we make a big decision, we're going to want to research exactly the risks and downsides. I think Dave did a good job of kind of talking about the potential downside of risk, but obviously a sales guy is never going to tell you, not to use their product. So I think we want to do some more research and probably more independent research to fully understand what sort of risk we're talking about.
Got it. And then Dave, based on that, how would you handle that type of, question in terms of, the pushback? How would you address that?
Yeah, I think it might just require a deeper dive into really kind of how we manage the risk, talking about the different components of it, what it's called, and how we do that. I wanted to try to stay at a high enough level so I didn't lose you and go too deep in the weeds. But I think that for that part of the conversation, if that was really kind of like your sticking point, then I would have spent more time really going into all the different components that exist within self-funding, how that also relates to fully insured plans, and how they're so similar to manage the risk in a very similar way.
Is there a way to protect the downside? And so, you said you plan every 5 years. There's maybe a year that's really bad. Is there a way to insure against the risk, or you hedge against the risk, or not?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's where we use insurance. We call it stop loss. Okay. And stop loss insurance allows us to manage that downside risk at an individual level, just so you know, and that's called the specific stop loss part of the specific stop loss insurance. And then there's, in case your whole plan, a bunch of people were to get sick and now your plan is really running, as they call it, hot. There's another type of insurance. It's called aggregate insurance. And that aggregate insurance protects the plan in aggregate in case you have a whole bunch of bad claims. And now that policy that's in place generally pays like $1 million above that maximum cost. And so, it is possible that if all of a sudden you went beyond that $1 million, now there's additional exposure back to the plan. The likelihood of that happening is less than probably 0.5%. I mean, it's very unlikely, but those types of risk, if you went down that road, it's important for you just to know and understand where it could shift back to you.
Yeah, and Fritz, two items around that. So like the way that a proposal is presented to you. So right now you're paying a flat monthly rate for a single, a two-party, a family, and then it is annualized, right? Both, you have monthly and then it's annualized and you have your overall premium of, let's say, that $3.5 million. A self-insured proposal, right, can be structured in the same way. So not only do you see what your potential claims costs are, but also your admin fee, your risk in terms of how do you protect yourself with those stop loss policies. And those are all wrapped into as we like to say, a premium equated number, so they can be budgeted for you or your CFO, so you know exactly what you're paying. And then at the end of the plan year, right, when you spend less, all those dollars go back to your pocket. You can also set the premium equated number, somewhere in the middle, or you can pay to expected. And then if you get a cash call, right, you can pay that as well. So what you have really is it's flexibility and choice. And the reason I think, most executives like this type of plan is that they finally have the opportunity to manage what is right now an uncontrollable expense, and they can view it as another business unit. And Dave spent some time talking about this, which is, claims drive premium. If you lower the cost of the claim, right, you've got Sibley to GW Hospital, right, that delta of, I think it was $80,000 on that procedure, right, that's massive. So every time that happens, right, all those dollars go back to your bottom line. The toolkit that Dave shared, whether it's taking a Humira that costs $60,000 and getting it for $30,000 for international sourcing, or somebody that's identified on a Cobra plan that's needs a bone marrow transplant, and now you can get them onto a marketplace plan. All of that data, all that information, all that insight gives you actionable strategies, not at the end of the plan year, but right away to begin to make those informed decisions. And that's what having control of your health plan allows an executive like yourself to do. So high quality, low cost, and improved experience.
Great.
Terrific. And Let's see if there are any other questions. I don't think there are. We'll say this, Fritz, you've been a ready, willing, and able participant today. We appreciate you getting in the tank. We're going to give everybody 10 minutes back. And, I have to say it was nice learning more about your business, your success, where you've come from, and also where you're headed. So we appreciate the time today. And to all the folks that have joined us online today, thanks for learning with Dave and Fritz. And also we've got another session next week in the Shark Tank at 1 p.m. next Tuesday. So, share with your colleagues, friends, and other executives as well. Dave or Fritz, any last minute words before we head out?
No, thanks.
For
Keith.
me.
That was great.
Fritz, thanks so much for just being a willing participant. It was fun just getting to know you. And I promise you, the next time I come to DC, I'm coming to Salazar and I want to have a shot of Tesla with you.
Might be a WellNet happy hour. We can make it happen. Yeah.
Oh, I like that.
Sounds
All
great.
right, guys. Have a great day.
Fritz, thanks very much.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you all.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.